IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hi guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Hope you're all well and keeping safe. First things first, we have a winner of the giveaway of Anirudh's debut book, Lords of the Deccan, that we covered on our previous episode. And the winner is Sarbani Mohapatra from Kolkata. Congratulations, you will be hearing from us soon. On the podcast today, we talk to Akshita Bhanj Deo, director of the Belgadia Palace, as we talk about the rich history and culture of Mayurbhanj, Odisha's largest district and an erstwhile princely state. Let's hop onto the episode and find out more. So with that introduction, we'd love to welcome Akshita Bhanj Deo, director at the Belgadia Palace, an 18th century heritage boutique property located in Baripada, Mayurbhanj, Odisha. Akshita, thank you so much for being a part of the Musafir Stories and welcome to the podcast.
Johar, hello. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
Thank you, Akshita. It is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And the introduction I gave is very short and concise. So why don't you speak a little bit more about yourself, Akshita, and also what you do?
Sure, happy to. So, hi everyone, my name is Akshita Bhanj Deo. I am the director of the Belgadia Palace, an 18th century boutique property in the eastern state of Odisha. I'm from Mayurbhanj, which is Odisha's largest district and one of its most populous. I'm actually living in Baripada, which is the district headquarters of Mayurbhanj. And this is my home. My ancestors have been here. This is my ancestral home. And given the pandemic, and actually a year before the pandemic, I decided to move back here along with my family to restore our home and open it up to visitors from all over the world. So it's really given me a chance to reconnect with my roots and discover the state, discover its language, cuisine, festivals, just being really absorbing the day-to-day of rural life has been really exciting. I do have a full-time job, so I work in agri-tech. I work with an artificial intelligence nonprofit. So it's been really exciting to actually be remote working from Baripada Mayurbhanj and still being quite globally connected to what's happening, especially to a field that I'm very much hold dear to my heart, which is, social impact. So it's really interesting to be able to have this life and sort of discover and rediscover parts of not just the country, but also myself.
Thank you, Akshita. And yeah, we are eagerly looking forward to discovering Mayurbhanj. The process of researching for this episode was also very eye-opening for me because Mayurbhanj is rich in so many different aspects that I have to admit that I had really been very ignorant of. I'm sure a lot of other people also wouldn't have known a lot about this, and that's why I think it's great to hear from you, who's also currently based out of Mayurbhanj, and you are from Mayurbhanj, right? So listening to a local. Please give us a little bit more in terms of background of Mayurbhanj, Akshita, where Mayurbhanj is located.
Yeah, so Mayurbhanj is located in the eastern state of Odisha, which is, in the east of India. It's bordered by West Bengal and Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh to the west, and slightly Andhra as well, Andhra Pradesh. The north of Mayurbhanj, exactly the district, however, is only bordered by West Bengal and Jharkhand. So we're a landlocked district. However, we have a really interesting topography and geography as well. So about more than a fourth of the district is covered by the Simlipal Elephant and Tiger Reserve, which is also UNESCO biosphere, which makes the district in itself extremely beautiful, extremely diverse, which has a lot of rolling lush hills, these beautiful majestic waterfalls. We have India's second and seventh highest waterfalls. We also have the world's only melanistic tiger, the black tiger as it's called, in Simlipal. And we have a number of different arts and crafts and cultures. So actually Mayurbhanj's tagline has always been the land of art and culture, because it's a little bit of a microcosm of the kind of arts and crafts you find in the East. And I think a lot of it is because of the fact that we have over 40 different kinds of indigenous communities settled in Mayurbhanj across the millennia. So, when I start talking about Mayurbhanj, for me, what's always interesting is the fact that Mayurbhanj has Paleolithic rocks from different stone ages. That means that we've actually had human civilization here for an extremely long amount of time. And you get to see these beautiful rock formations. We're also really famous because we have some of the richest deposits of iron ore in the country. So one of the most famous stories of Mayurbhanj is how Maharaja Sriram Chandra Bhanj Deo in 1904 invited a Parsi gentleman called J.N. Tata to come and have a look at these iron ore deposits and come up with India's first iron ore and steel factory. The vision was to make sure that Indians were able to build their own iron ore, and of course that is the age of industrialization that they wanted to have. And of course we know who this gentleman turned out to be and his legacy he left behind. So it's really great to sort of know that one of India's largest conglomerates has their roots in Mayurbhanj.
Yeah, just listening to all of this, not just the rich culture and the heritage of the place, but also the really rich flora, fauna with Simlipal, right? All of this. They're also one of the biggest districts of Odisha, right?
Yeah.
A lot of things it has going for it, but a lot of people just don't know about this, which is very unfortunate and sad. But Akshita is doing a wonderful job in making more people aware of these through the different things she's doing and the different efforts she's carrying out as well. So we'll certainly double click on a lot of these things today and find out more and learn more from Akshita why one should visit Mayurbhanj and what are some of the things it has to offer. Now, just in terms of getting to Mayurbhanj, you did mention that it is in the eastern part of Odisha. If one has to get to Mayurbhanj in terms of access, what would be the preferred mode of getting there?
Yeah, so we have the two closest international airports for international listeners I would start off with are in Kolkata and Bhubaneshwar, which are both 4 to 5 hours away by road. But we do have rail and bus connectivity. So we are equidistant by road to actually Bhubaneshwar and Calcutta, as I mentioned, but also Baripada, the headquarters, is 2.5 hours from Jamshedpur and about 6 hours from Ranchi, 6 hours from Puri. I'm naming the closest big cities and towns. So we're actually really well connected to big cities in Odisha, in Jharkhand, and as well as Bengal. But I recommend basis the person's preference, flying into Calcutta or Bhubaneshwar. More so Bhubaneshwar, because you actually get to see a little bit of what coastal Odisha is like before you come into the northern area, which is known so much for its tropical topography.
Yep. Wonderful. So very, very accessible, and also makes for, especially people living close by, makes for a great road trip, right? Could be a weekend or even much longer. We'll speak of some of the options one has when visiting Mayurbhanj, but thanks so much for kind of calling out the geographical orientation and how one can get to Mayurbhanj. Now, before we jump into the specifics and also talk a little bit more about the Belgadia Palace, would you also shed some more light about Mayurbhanj, the state, right?
Yeah.
It has been one of the princely states of India, and the Bhanja dynasty has actually been one of the iconic dynasties of the place as well. And also your connection to the dynasty, right? We haven't addressed this so far in the podcast, but for the first time we have royalty on the podcast too. So we're really excited about that. So Akshita, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, Mayurbhanj, for listeners who are not familiar with the history of South Asia, in some ways, South Asia used to be a conglomeration of different princely states. In what is now present India, you could say about 575. And Mayurbhanj state were also called as an Mayurbhanj in a lot of the British documents, was one of these princely states of India during predominantly documented during the British Raj, but of course, like most princely states, predates this by hundreds of years. It was one of the largest states of the Eastern States Agency and one of the 3 states of the Bengal States Agency. So, a fun fact is that the emblem of the state is still 2 peacocks, for according to legend, the ancestors of the rulers originated from the sage Vashish's peafowl's eyes. So, our Gotra till date is still that of being a Vashisht. But Mayurbhanj state has, the first Bhanj ruler was documented through stone scriptures actually in 598 AD. Before the Bhanj dynasty, you actually have the Bhaumakara dynasty, and Kalinga has had many famous dynasties, one of them which was Bhaumakara, and during this period there might have been a family which sort of gained a lot of, through their leadership prowess, being part of, community, whether that's building or protection. And that's when you see the Bhanj dynasty name really start to appear. What's obviously been interesting to me, for mostly when you study princely rulers and dynasties, is not so much that they've come into power, because many have, through the rise and fall of dynasties, but it's always been the fact that families have been able to sustain itself, in this case for almost 1500 years. So because the dynasty and the Bhanj rulers had been in this part of Odisha for so long, a lot of the architecture, art, the patronage of the arts and culture all still have a lot of intermingling and a lot of, you can see a lot of my ancestors' presence and vision in a lot of the art forms, a lot of the building of the district as well, which is really, really, of course, interesting to me, being a student of history and a scholar very much obsessed with mythology and, what happened in the past and what can we learn from it.
Yeah, some really great things to learn about the Bhanja dynasty and its origins. And also, thank you for the backstory of the emblem with the 2 peacocks as well, right? And
Yeah.
it also is a part of the name of the place. So one can kind of figure out how the importance is, right, of the peacock and the story. By the way, Akshita is what, the 48th generation of the family, I think, right? Akshita,
Yes, 48.
So Akshita has a very, very personal connection there as well. And also the place, obviously, we'll speak a lot more about Mayurbhanj, but even Belgadia Palace that Akshita is the director at, we'll speak a little bit more about that, because that is also very personal. Belgadia Palace used to be a palace for hosting foreign dignitaries in the past, right, Akshita? Yeah, please tell us a little bit more about that.
So we come from a place in Mayurbhanj which is still presently there. It's called Kiching. It used to be called Kichinga Mandala or Kichinga Kota. This is when you'll find stone inscriptions and edicts which have stayed on from the Bhanj dynasty's main fort, you could say. And some of it actually even mentions, like a lot of local people actually even mention this in terms of the Mahabharata, because you have the King Kichak and Viratgarh. If you think of, you remember the Pandavas, there are a lot of parts of Mayurbhanj actually which share a lot of mythological stories. Whether the Pandavas being in exile, or you remember parts of when they were exiled, they were in King Kichak's court. So Kiching is still present there. It's still it's our main temple. It's our Ishta Devi. So we follow the idol there. And funnily enough, after Kiching, which is our first fort and, you could say former palace, our original palace, we moved from there to Haripur. This was in the 14th century. So Kiching is still there. It's, a great place to look at Kalinga architecture. It's made out of black stone. After Kiching, you actually see the next fort that came up in the Bhanj dynasty's history, which was Haripur. Now, Haripur is extremely interesting for me because it's mentioned in Akbar's biography, the Akbarnama, because there were so many, wars that were fought, especially with Firoz Shah Tughlaq when he came to take over this part of Orissa, and he kept speaking about this one fort which was surrounded by so much jungles and had dense guerrilla warfare happening. It was very hard for them to capture. This was Haripur. And after Haripur, there was actually another fort we had closer to between Kiching and Baripada, which was completely under attack by the Marathas, and so was broken down. This fort, there's nothing we could find of it except maybe old stones that are lying around the area. But we actually managed to trace the door of that fort, which has now turned up in a hotel in Madurai, and it's still called the Mayur Dwar. So someone actually sent me a picture of it when they were there. So it's funny how history comes back to later generations in different ways. And the present palace, the main Belgadia Palace, was actually built by one of my ancestors, a female, a woman. Her name was Her Highness Maharani Sumitra Devi. Now, what's really interesting is this palace was built in 1804, and that's very early for the British and especially Indians to be influenced by Victorian architecture. This was a little before Victoria, but you can call it Victorian because the kind of columns and the Greek Roman architecture which was favored by England at the time. And so when the main Mayurbhanj Palace was built, which had over 100 rooms, an indoor swimming pool, 8 to 10 courtyards, different terracotta temples within it, and these beautiful gargoyles, and kind of resembled the Buckingham Palace if you look at it from the outside. The Belgadia Palace was built side by side to it. Of course, just one, a small, very small section of it at the time in 1804. It really got massive renovations in the 1900s because, Sumitra Devi realized that she was fighting these wars against the Marathas, against the British, against, nearby other princely states which would now be in present day Jharkhand and Bihar and Odisha. And, she was, she realized that Mayurbhanj needed this rebranding exercise, and her vision actually paid off because she realized that she wanted to get foreign dignitaries and call influential people from all over the world to come to Mayurbhanj to experience it and invest in it and really be able to invest in the talent and the entrepreneurship and have this confluence of ideas.
Yeah, one would think, right, that this is 1804. It might have been like a very patriarchal or male-dominated society, and more so for royalty. And it's really heartening to find out how progressive it was and how Maharani Sumitra Devi, right? You said the name, who actually commissioned the building of this palace. And we're talking of Make in India now, but looks like it's already a borrowed concept from back in the day, right? You were inviting, like the family was inviting investors to come over, right? And this is where most of those people, foreign dignitaries and visitors would be housed, and those are the origins of the palace. Yeah, talk to us a little bit more about the palace. Very interesting structures, well, like you said, influences of Roman Greek architecture. And how did this thought about, because this is still your residence as well, right? So how did the idea of one renovating this and also opening this up to other people to come and find out more, learn about not just the place but also the state and the family, how did that come to mind?
When we had the property, and my grandmother was still alive at the time, and my grandmother's from Nepal. She's actually the daughter of the late His Highness King Tribhuvan. And she's had a very interesting history as well. And, she remembered my grandfather always, thinking about and maybe, having people over and, restoring a part of Belgaria for it to be completely, in hospitality. I'm not sure she had this as her exact blueprint in mind, but the idea of entertaining, always kind of being an ambassador to Mayurbhanj and Odisha in any way we could was always present there. So I always remembered my grandparents inviting people over for different festivals, opening up the house for different, for the public to come in, hosting different community initiatives here, whether it was making sure that artists and arts were always under patronage, having the house be more of a platform than a property. So I think when me and my sister had both studied abroad for 10 odd years, we had done our high school in international boarding school in Singapore. And my sister had, me and my sister both went to the United States as Devi scholars to study. So especially more so for her, because she had this idea when she had been traveling Europe and different parts of America, and she's kind of saw the heritage houses and the way that they had been able to generate income not only for themselves but for the surrounding community, whether it was through initiatives like Farm to Table or having museums for artists and artist residencies. My sister realized that there was an opportunity to, model the house in this very boutique Art Deco design, and at the same time being able to, hire locally, skill locally, be able to market a lot of the local products in a way that could suit an international palate and taste. So she decided to come back from New York and, move straight into Mayurbhanj, started the restoration process, started building this house up, and I was a bit more skeptical, to be honest. So when my sister came back, there was such an overwhelming response from both the local communities who wanted to be part of the house in some way, whether it was coming and showcasing their arts and artifacts like dokra and sabai to guests, or actually having young youth who were wanting to be naturalists and guides and show people everything from what the different kinds of exotic birds that were found here to actually taking them through nature trails, where indigenous populations knew about had such ancient knowledge to share about crops and grains that our ancestors ate and consumed.
Yeah, 100%. And also it is a great story, not just of the entrepreneurial spirit, but I don't know how many times you mentioned local throughout your response, right? You've kind of focused on that, and it really shows, it stresses, right? It's not like an ivory castle or an ivory tower that you're creating. It is something that is actually being supported and fully vested in by the local community out there, which is very, very important for sustainability, which is also another key theme of the property, right? And also, I can't stop going gaga over just the aesthetics of it, just the rooms and you have, to the most part, maintained the original structure. Obviously, in terms of preservation and renovation, you have improved upon it and made it more contemporary that way, but still a lot of the original structure has been kind of retained and improved upon, right? So do you want to speak a little bit more to what are the kind of experiences and what are the kind of rooms also? Very, very beautiful colors, the antique furniture, high ceilings, all of that. I was really blown over. We'll definitely share some pictures too along with the podcast, but would you like to speak a little bit more to that, Akshita?
Definitely. So, like I said, my family has a bit of mixed culture because both my grandmothers came from Nepal and my mother herself is from the royal family of Jaisalmer. So a lot of our tastes, in our family have been influenced by not just Odisha and the local culture, but also the history of the place, which has, of course, been built during the 1800s and 1900s. And seen a lot of the house itself has seen both the World Wars, the Bengal Renaissance, it's seen the independence movement. So there's so much in terms of just the content once you step inside. But to step back for a second, it's this, it was built on a hill. So you drive into Baripada and it's right opposite the fire station, it's just quaint building built from 100 years ago. It's very nondescript because it's a little bit in the center of the city. We had to put up these massive neon lit signs for people to realize that it was actually the palace. Because, like I said, it was a home for foreign dignitaries, for one or two lords and ladies or governors who were visiting. But it was like an entertainment leisure house, which is, has this long, winding driveway, about 100 meters. And on the right and left, you actually have these beautiful lawns, which my grandparents have grown a lot of different flowers and different kinds of plants on. So as you come in, there are these mehendi lined hedges, which of course I use throughout the year for different things. And then, on the left, we actually copied the indoor swimming pool, which was in the main Belgadia Palace, and we built it back in Belgadia. So we had this outdoor swimming pool, and then you have this beautiful open air columned space with a lot of Ionic and Doric themes on it. So Ionic, Doric, and Corinthian are three kind of columns you'll find in Victorian architecture, which you'll see this long column, rising up, and then you have a lot of nature, floral imagery on it. And once you enter, it's actually called the Hathi Baranda because elephants would come on this route. So it's got this red laterite soil, which is found all across Mayurbhanj. Has this beautiful smell when rain hits it. Actually, it's lovely in the monsoons. And you enter into this porch, and you'll see one thing in Belgadia, though, is that even though it's got this very British architecture, European-looking building, it's got this, a lot of the local crafts. So you'll enter, and there are these two, 3 feet elephants made of black stone, hand carvings, floral carvings all over them. And as you walk up the steps onto the porch, which has these high arches, long French bay windows, a lot of shutters, which was very reminiscent of the Bengal School of Architecture at that time, And then you enter the house, and we have this long staircase with M embossed in it. So you'll see a lot of our emblem embossed on the windows or across the house. And as soon as you enter, there's this, we call it the Edo Ballroom, because a famous place that my ancestor Maharaja Sriram Bhanj Deo, who is the Bhanj dynasty's most famous ruler, called also known as the philosopher king. So we named it after him going to Japan. He said it was his favorite country, and if he was born again, he'd want to be born in Japan. So, and because he had spent so much time in Japan, we actually called it the Edo Ballroom because of the Mayurbhanj connection with Japan. So, we call it the Wes Anderson-esque decoration, because when my sister and my mother, who were primarily responsible for the restoration, when they were doing the house, they actually looked for all the old pictures. All the furniture was from the 3 different palaces. Nothing was new or bought newly. Everything was reupholstered, recycled, upcycled. So doors became windows, terracotta pots became sinks, and I remember when we had like these really old, everything from except the wiring, electricals, and the amenities being completely new and having to be redone for obvious reasons, and bringing in the internet and Wi-Fi and all of that. We wanted to make sure that we kept everything just as it was. So even the bathrooms have these beautiful claw-footed bathtubs, which I absolutely love, because who has the luxury of these extremely old, quaint bathrooms and everything that went in it. And when you enter the Edo Ballroom, which was, like I said, the house was used for leisure and for entertaining. And something important was that the person I mentioned, Maharaja Sriram Bhanj Deo, his second wife was the daughter of the very famous Bengal Renaissance reformer called Keshav Chandra Sen. His third daughter, Maharani Sucharu Devi. So she brought with her, especially because this house was used so much in the turn of the century and then the right before the period of World War I and the 1920s, there was a lot of famous artists and philosophers and poets and social reformers who came to the house during that period, the turn of the century and the 20th century, when there was so much influx of ideas happening in the East especially. So you see a lot of that because of the kind of, we had libraries and a projector room. We had these beautiful Burma teak wood, bars and vinyl record players in each of the rooms. Our libraries have some of the most fantastic collections of limited edition and special edition prints. One of my favorites is that I found the book Casanova, a limited edition print in one of my ancestors' rooms. And the Arabian Nights and Virginia Woolf and all of that. And of course you have paintings from Hemendranath Majumdar. So there are these beautiful oil canvas paintings which light up all the rooms. And the colors, like I said, very Wes Anderson-esque, because it's all, all of them are almost jewel toned. So all the rooms had like pink and salmon and this mahogany deep green and this ox blood, which is my favorite, red. And there's one room we named after, it's called the Bengal Renaissance room, because we know that's where Maharani Sucharu Devi stayed when she visited. So our rooms are divided into standards, deluxes, and suites, because the shapes were just so, the beauty of boutique properties is that they have their own story to tell. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a cookie cutter design of what we see with massive chain hotels which are backed by industries and companies. These are homes, and these are family homes. So each of the rooms have been inspired by different personalities in the family or different people who came and stayed there for a long period of time. So we have the Empress Suite, because the Mayurbhanj family had a lot of connections with the royal families in the Middle East. Or it has the Narayan Hiti room. Narayan Hiti was the main palace of the Nepal royal family and monarchy. Then the Bengal Renaissance room, like I said. And then we had the Victorian suite, because we knew of so many of the lords and ladies who had came and visited. Someone who famously came and stayed was Dr. Annie Besant, who was an Irish theosophist and social reformer. And it's so amazing that they came to Belgadia at a time when, she was speaking about Irish independence to a crowd in Baripada. And of course, because of the time, they couldn't speak on Indian independence, but it was the same values, and the fact that Belgadia was a hotbed of this kind of thinking and activity, extremely progressive, extremely reformist, and really trying to imagine what a new India could be like. So our downstairs room especially pays homage to a lot of the communities that form Mayurbhanj, an integral part, and the arts of it. So you have the Dokra room, the Chow room. We have one room which has a lot of art from the Santhali tribe, And so we've named the Santhal room. And as and where we can, we always try to put dokra, which is a 4,000-year-old lost wax art technique. And we have a lot of sabai grass, which is found all over Greater Mayurbhanj, which is parts of Jharkhand, Bengal, and present-day districts of Balasore and Nilgiri as well. So we actually have these beautiful, and of course, Pattachitra and filigree, and whether it's lac or tassar. So it's beautiful to actually have, where the outside comes in, have these nature motifs through our wallpapers, which have elephant motifs on it, or floral botanical motifs on it. And when you walk through the rooms, whether it's projector room, which used to be the projector room, we obviously just made it into a more modern day projector, or you listen to Hindustani classical and jazz on the vinyl record players and actually get to see some of the tablas and harmoniums and the esraj, which is one of the instruments that the family used, and that was popular in the Mayurbhanj Gharana. So there's this beautiful confluence of India, because at least for me, I hadn't been to a lot of heritage places which had a mix of indigenous culture, a mix of various royal, personalities and influences from different royal families in India. Like I said, Rajasthan, Nepal, and Odisha is quite an interesting mix to have. And then, of course, when you go to the projector room, the dining rooms, the living rooms, the libraries, and then you come to the spaces to eat, the cuisine is just magnificent, because Odisha has this very underrated cuisine. And the kind of everything from the crockery to the cutlery, like eating pokhalo, which is really famous. We have pokhalo devas in Odisha, and which is basically fermented rice, a bit watery, but you use a number of different condiments, everything from fish, spices, coriander, chilies, the different kinds of chutneys using aubergine and tomatoes, in yams and sweet potatoes in ways that I've never had before. But the cuisine of Odisha is just so famous. So something we like to do is this Odia thali for our guests, because you have, you eat in terracotta pots on and plates on banana leaf, obviously with your hands, because that's the only way to eat this amazing God's food. And to be able to come from a family, I'm very lucky, because we have a lot of Nepali dishes and food that have been passed down as family recipes. So that's always in these very old bronze and kansa. Kansa is a mix of 3 different kinds of iron and alloys. So I think it's bronze, copper, and iron, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's really beautiful to use these old cutlery and crockery that's been passed down and actually eat the way that maybe my ancestors did. And we have a temple in the property as well, which have these very, very intriguing eyes actually fixed in metal on them. It's the eyes of the goddess, so you have the 3 eyes. And if you've read The Great Gatsby, there's this very symbolic reason of having these eyes watching you. But it's a very interesting mix for me. And it's like I said, I always think of it as very Art Deco house. Like you walk into a room and it always has a different color, a different ambience, a different feel. I love being surrounded by art, books, and music. That's a really important theme for me when I'm in a space. And one of my favorite things is actually the furniture, because when India gained independence in 1947, but Mayurbhanj actually joined the Union of India on 1st January 1949. So actually it ran as an independent. There was an experiment of democracy, you can call it, that Mayurbhanj had for a little over a year. All my ancestors had basically wanted all the palaces and their main residences to become schools and colleges. The one in Shillong, the summer palace of the Mayurbhanj royal family, actually is still the only IIM in the east, if I'm not mistaken. And the one in Calcutta is also on Mayurbhanj Road, as it is called. Raja Bagh also is now with the West Bengal ITI. It's an ITI school. And the one, like I said, the one in the main Mayurbhanj Palace, like the one that's shaped on Buckingham, has become a high school and college. But Belgadia had just few furniture pieces that each of the personalities chose during the accession to put into Belgadia. They chose it as their primary residence. So the furniture doesn't match in every room, in every living space. So I can only imagine when they were choosing these pieces of furniture, who chose it for what reason. So it's really special, because a lot of like the cupboards my grandfather had actually made for my grandmother. He designed that for her. So they were made with a lot of emblems and motifs from the Himalayan ranges to flowers which are from the Himalayas or found around Nepal or the hills. So I think in some way the when you come into a heritage home, there's so much of handmade. It's never going to be perfect, machine made, look alike everywhere. It's really different because I think when you enter, each piece of furniture, each color, each light, each tapestry or the upholstery, even the shape and size of the beds or mirrors were chosen for a specific reason. The one thing I do love is that all the rooms have these beautiful full-length mirrors, at least the suites. And I can only imagine that's because a lot of the women and men took their time in dressing and dressing very stylishly at the time.
I really, listening to you, it felt like I got a quick tour of the whole of Mayurbhanj, right? It's like the whole of Mayurbhanj packed into the Belgadia Palace. It has elements of everything, right from history to interesting people, the backstories, and the arts also, right? Like you mentioned, so much of the local art and handicrafts and everything has been imbibed in a lot of these individual rooms, and each of them has their own characteristic. We'll definitely share a few quick write-ups about these interesting rooms too, so you can enjoy. And obviously the icing on top of the cake, or a cherry on top of the cake, is that you also get to feel like royalty living in a palace. So really, really a wonderful confluence of all of these different things, and it clearly encapsulates what Mayurbhanj and the whole spirit of Mayurbhanj is all about. So thank you so much for beautifully describing this to us, Akshita, because it's always hard, right? Even pictures don't do justice, leave alone just words. You've been so descriptive and so beautiful in describing all of these different aspects of the Belgadia Palace. Really now makes me want to come visit as soon as I get a chance to.
Yes, you must.
It's definitely there whenever I make a trip back to India. And now, I guess where you have to or where you want to stay while you explore Mayurbhanj is kind of sorted, right? The Belgadia Palace is the place to be in. And a lot of Mayurbhanj you already explored living in the palace, living at the property itself, right? You get a sense and you get a feel of a lot of the different things the place has to offer. But what are some of the, say, quick things to do while someone is at Belgadia, right? You mentioned a few things in passing, right? From nature to arts, architecture.
Yeah.
Can we deep dive into a couple of them, perhaps starting with Simlipal? There's definitely a lot of interesting waterfalls and nature and the tiger reserve as well, right? So you want to touch upon that, Akshita?
I wish I could say that Belgaria encompasses Mayurbhanj, but honestly, I would say you have to do a lot more in Mayurbhanj to experience it, but I feel that Belgaria forms a very important part of the story. I will say that we have this saying in Mayurbhanj called Bara Masare Tera Porbo, which means that in 12 months we have 13 festivals. And the exciting thing that obviously that's deliberate in this saying is that every month in Mayurbhanj, because of the number of indigenous communities we have, each of them has their own language, cuisine, festival, ways of dressing. So you should definitely spend time in driving through Mayurbhanj, whether that's the north, south, east or west. They have their own flavor. A must visit is the Haat. The Haat is like a bazaar. It happens weekly on Sundays and Thursdays. You can ask any local person and they can point to the nearest one happening. This is really where you're going to experience Mayurbhanj. I love going there. This is where I go grocery shopping. So everything is fresh. You even sometimes see the barter system taking place, right? Because different communities, Mayurbhanj is completely agrarian. We have, poultry, apart from poultry and livestock, there aren't any major industries or companies. And that in some way has been a blessing because people have been able to obviously, certain areas of Mayurbhanj still are famous for whether it's spices or, if you're closer to Simlipal, it's forest communities and, what to purchase from whom it's just been hereditary almost. So in the Haat, I think, being able to see the local spices, foods, vegetables, even crafts actually is, amazing. And one thing, for example, our main dish, someone from Mayurbhanj will, never forgive me if I don't mention this, is Muri Mangso. So Muri Mangso is our puffed rice in Mayurbhanj, is world famous. People actually pack it and take it back from here. We have a brand called Murmurin. So our puffed rice is really famous, and we have it with mutton curry, which is absolutely amazing. They say that the goats here feast on sal leaves, and that's why the mutton is extremely tender, very lean. And so mutton curry is a must, which you should have from Garma Garam in Baripada. That's one of the oldest stores, like restaurants, family restaurants that have been serving things from the 1950s. I would also say go to the Heart, because we have ant chutney as our delicacy as well.
Sure.
So you'll have that, but you find that in a lot of eastern states. Apart from the local hearts and bazaars, I would say visit the 14th century Jagannath temple. After the Puri Rath Yatra, the one in Mayurbhanj is the most famous in India and Odisha. And also because the goddess Subhadra's chariot is only pulled by women. Now this is an event where women are at the helm of a spiritual event. And even for India and not just in the world, that's very, very unique. So, you have thousands of women, hundreds, pulling these chariots down the road, and of course no men in sight. So that's really, really special. That happens in around June, July, the Rath Yatra. Apart from that, I would say, visit the, in Mayurbhanj, just in Baripada at least, the heritage tour is really important. You get to see the main palace, go to the oldest museum of the state, which is the Baripada Museum. Even visiting the Jagannath temple, the Baripada Palace, the museum, they're all 5-10 minutes from each other, but you get to see the collector's house. For example, the State Bank of India used to be the Mayurbhanj State Bank. So if you enter, you actually see this wall of everyone from, the Tatas and, Hari Krishna Mehta, who was Odisha's first chief minister, all writing checks to the Mayurbhanj State Bank or asking money from it. That's really special to kind of see what the capitals of erstwhile princely states, how they became part of the new Indian democracy. So especially seeing in a place like Baripada, which is so rural and agrarian, having the headquarters with a lot of these colonial architectures is really interesting. And apart from the heritage tourism, the village tourism, so going to the Sabai grass self-help groups and actually seeing how they take the freshly cut sabai grass, weave it with date leaves, with no machines at all, just a needle and thread, and create the most exquisite pieces of, whether it's bags or mats or bowls. It's breathtaking, and you can customize and make to order something. And where else does that happen? That's the literal definition of couture. And apart from that, if you go down to Udala, you have these beautiful handloom schools. So the Sabai Grass Self-Help Group, if you just Google it on Google Maps, you can visit there. If not, just hit me up on Instagram or DM. I'm happy to tell you where it is. It's in a place near Barjor Dam. The Udala Handloom School is called Mayurbhanj. It's especially beautiful because they're trying to revive the motifs of Mayurbhanj from the 3rd century. And that's just a task in itself, because so much of the textile industries of places like Mayurbhanj actually moved to places, the artists moved to places like Gujarat in search of better livelihoods. And so many villages lost the craft of handloom. So are they just bringing the loom back, they're actually reviving old motifs and techniques using ways. I've been so blessed to actually see silk worms being taken and made, the silk and the fabrics being made from hand and scratch. And I never had a context of how my clothes were made till I moved back to Mayurbhanj. And so the Tasar Handloom School is amazing in Udala. That's why you see a lot of the handloom still there. Also, each of the tribes have their own design and colors. So you can actually identify who was from which tribe in a heart because of the way they wear the dhoti or the drape. And so that's really beautiful. I would also give a shout out to Galangaban and Lipsa Hembrum. So if you are looking for handloom inspired by Mayurbhanj, she's the best at it and just has some really interesting designs which showcase indigenous art with modern design. And you can purchase that online. Also, when you're in Baripada, right next to Belgadia, there's Mayur Shilpa, which sells sabai if you can't go to the village. There's also Boyanika, which has the most exquisite range of handloom, saris, scarves from all across Odisha. It also picks up all these crafts from tribal groups across the state. So I think it's just amazing to shop there. And right next to it is the Odisha tribal the store, the tribal store, which has, Koraput coffee. It has a lot of spices, a lot of soaps made from different tribal groups in Odisha, and especially in Mayurbhanj, the honey, the lemongrass is a must take. Like I would definitely get that because our honey has this very special taste because it's all from Simlipal, which is a biosphere. and they're made from rock bees. They're bees who actually make hives on these ancient rocks. So apparently that gives a flavor to it. So that's a must take. And if you miss all of that, you can still come to Belgaria, because we have our store houses a little bit of all of this. And so you can get it directly from the source, or if you don't have the time, come stay with us and we'll make sure you get to do that. And one thing that I would say is, definitely visit that. One, apart from the rural and the heritage tourism, is we partnered with a lot of NGOs to have their artists, or have their whatever their mission is, to have it being performed or showcased at Mayurbhanj. So we've collaborated with Project Chowni, which is a NGO that's reviving the dying art form of Mayurbhanj Chow, which is actually performed by our soldiers. And after the soldiers of a lot of the Odia royal states got disbanded after the Pike Rebellion, the dancers would actually tell the Britishers that they were just performing, they were dancing folk dances, but actually they were keeping their body in check in case the king ever called them to fight a war. So now it's still called Mayurbhanj Chow. It's actually a dance form that I'm also starting to learn. So it's very exciting for me to watch it all the time at my house, almost every other day. It's performed with swords and shields. And it's a beautiful art form that actually is performed without the mask, like its siblings, the Saraikela and the Purulia dance form of Chow. So it's really beautiful to be able to see Mayurbhanj Chow at Belgaria as well. So that's a must-see, I would say.
Yeah, so much to unpack. I think even a month-long visit will probably be short to kind of uncover a lot of these things. But like I said, the sad part is a lot of people just don't know about this or ignorant about these. And even like you mentioned at the beginning, we just are looking for an opportunity to take the first flight out and go visit these exotic places whereas there's so much just hidden in our country waiting to be explored. That's a sad part of it, but I'm so glad that at least our future is in the right hands, and in terms of champions of especially Mayurbhanj and India in general, and in youngsters like you who are actually coming forward, getting back deep into the roots, right, and also sharing this with the world to know and why one should come visit Mayurbhanj, and in this place, and in this case Mayurbhanj, and also how this whole model can be made sustainable, right, by keeping or going with the community, making sure everybody is involved in this process. So for anybody who's even having second thoughts, I don't know why you would now, after having heard to Akshita for all this while. There's so many things and reasons to come visit Mayurbhanj and Odisha, be it the people, be it the history, be it the rich culture and the heritage, the art forms. I'm just running out of words and running out of breath now, having to list out all of these things. But thank you, Akshita. It was really a pleasure to actually have a chat with you and learn about all of these really hidden gems, I would say, right? It's high time that we take more notice. And a great way to go local. I think we speak a lot about it, but now's the time to time to action upon it, and take at the first chance, take your flight or drive down wherever you are to Mayurbhanj and to Belgadia. There's no better way of doing it. And Akshita, for somebody looking to learn more about you, learn more about the Belgadia Palace, what's a good way of either following you or looking you up on social media? What would be best?
So you can follow us on social media in the handle @the Belgadia Palace, or you can just email us on stay@thebelgariapalace.com if you would like to make some bookings or have any queries. And you can just visit our website for more information, www.thebelgariapalace.com. And in case you still want to come to Mayurbhanj and not stay at Belgaria, just definitely Google Mayurbhanj. There are 2 or 3 other places to stay. I'll also give them a shout out. One is Aranya Nivas, which is about 20 minutes and on the buffer zone of Simlipal. And there are also 2 or 3 other small homestays you can find on Airbnb. One that I would recommend is also the Bhimkund Eco Stay, which is on the border of Mayurbhanj and Keonjhar. But I always love to give a shout out to other young entrepreneurs and startups in and around Mayurbhanj who are doing their bit to promote tourism. Because if you want to, especially after the last 2 years, the devastation that it's caused in the economy, if you want to help out, just go travel somewhere. In some way or the other, you're directly or indirectly impacting economics and livelihoods in that place. So definitely a good, many good reasons to travel within India right now. And thank you so much for having me on here. in the beginning, I was like, oh my God, this is for 1 hour. What am I going to say? And I looked up and I can't believe it's been more than an hour. So I'm really happy that I was able to, you gave me the time and opportunity. And I'm really, really excited and looking forward to people who are listening to this podcast who have more questions about Mayurbhanj or Odisha. Just definitely reach out. And or we're always looking for collaborations and partnerships for residencies, retreats, or any other sort of collaboration. So this is just exciting to be on here, meet more people, and get the word out and be an ambassador for the state as always.
Thank you so much, Akshita. That was really brilliant and so inspiring, even for just us, the Musafir Stories, right? We are always trying to shed light and create awareness about places within India, and you are such an inspiration to how be passionate about your own roots, your own background, and take that to the world. I don't think we have a shortage or lack or dearth of anything in terms of the history or the culture or the heritage or the arts, and I think it's just a matter of being passionate about them and sharing that with the world. And thank you so much for sharing this so beautifully, Akshita. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Johar, and hope to see you very soon here.
That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.